I think it's like 11. I don't know, like a 14. I'm like a 19 shoe
You're
size.
6'4".
I'm like a 26. I'm like Shaq, you know.
All right. I need
Shoe
boot size. Just give me
11.
boot size.
I'll look at my boots and I'll tell
All right.
you.
Rob Browne, Brendan Martin here with you. Awesome Thursday morning. We are live streaming on 7 channels. Take a picture with that with your phone or the QR code.
Get the QR code up for you.
Brendan, we got Coach Matt Dean joining us. John Hartwell on assignment with donors in Baton Rouge. Jason Caldwell, AU Undercover, checks in. Gary Harris, Tide 100.9, Tider Insider TV, going to check in. We're going to be all over the place. College football, basketball, and the bottom line is you get into what is happening right now. We got an intense race, and Arkansas is coming on.
Everyone's
Trey
coming
Johnson,
on.
by the way.
Everyone's coming on in the SEC. Everyone's good.
Yeah, and I watched Trey Johnson for Texas last night, the freshman out of Garland, Texas, on the road in Fayetteville for the 157th meeting, Hogs and Horns. He had 39 points, but not enough as the Razorbacks get the win. Lot to cover, man, so get pen and paper handy. Next hour and change, we're going to fill your brain with lots of great content. So let's bring in the coach from Davenport, Iowa, Matt Dean, who was swimming with the seals at the zoo this morning for his morning workout. And we're ready to roll. Coach, how was it?
Swimming with the seals.
You know, you must be referring to the Memphis Zoo right across the street from Rhodes College, Rob. What a great place to be when you need a break to go over to the Memphis Zoo. But guys, no, just another great night in the SEC. I will tell you, you mentioned Texas and Trey Johnson, but how about Arkansas? After starting 0-5 in the SEC, they've won 6-4. They're a legit NCAA tournament team. Yeah. And then also, let's be honest, Auburn last night beat someone that can get to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, Ole Miss. Yeah. Rob, that was just a comprehensive performance. Yeah. And Kentucky wins an unbelievable finish at the buzzer or at the last few seconds to beat Oklahoma on the road. So I saw something yesterday.
Vanderbilt was a good win.
I was going to say, hey, listen.
Can we talk about Vanderbilt beating A&M?
Boom, Cumberland.
That's what I'm trying to be referring to here. No one's like taking the bait. I mean, Vandy beats A&M. I don't know. That's just like everything.
At A&M. I think
that's at A&M on the road.
Right? Yeah. And let's just, I mean, I guess I'm to the point now, nothing surprises me because I think this league's going to get 12 teams in the NCAA tournament. There's even talk of possible 13, but I think 12 is probably the number they'll set on. I think Vanderbilt's squarely in unless they come off the rails the last few games.
Prove me wrong.
Well, watching Vandy last night, that's 3 straight losses for the Aggies. And I love Buzz Williams as a coach, but they just seem like they've had a few too many rock fights this year. And Mark Byington, the coach who came from Virginia Tech to Vanderbilt, what a job he's done. I'm not saying he's coach of the year. I have dialed in Dennis Gates after going 0-19 last year. But you could make an argument if you're writing for a Vanderbilt website like our good friend from Southeastern 16, Chris Lee, could do it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Vanderbilt had some tremendous wins this whole season, so it didn't surprise me. I guess I am more surprised with A&M now losing 3 in a row, as you said, Rob, and to lose at home, uncharacteristic of a Buzz Williams team. You know, they also lost a game down the finish against Tennessee, there this past weekend. So that's what this league will do to you guys, though. I mean, you think you're in a good spot and you'll have a 2 or 3 game stretch where you don't think you can play basketball again or not as well. And that's what happens when you're in the best league in the country. Yeah. I was watching Game Day last week and I was listening to the Big 12 commissioner talk about, they're the best, basketball league, or best brand. And I'm like, guys, not this year. It's not. I just feel like the SEC this year is going to go deep in multiple teams and a potential for, so many teams get to the Final Four in our league, And we've stopped talking about Tennessee for the most part. I mean, I know you guys do different stories, different days, and I understand that. I'm here on Thursdays. But what Tennessee's been able to do lately, man, Zakai Ziegler's shot underneath that bounce set comes off the screen action in the corner, doesn't hesitate, hits the three to put the nail in the coffin against A&M. Shea Lanier comes out and basically says, this is what I needed. I needed Coach Barnes to help get me to the next level. They have some interesting pieces, guys. I mean, I heard this again, and we've talked about this. Charles Barkley was on last night during the broadcast, Rob, of the Auburn game. And he was referring to last year Alabama when they lost basically that first weekend or first game, and they rebounded to get to the Final Four. And I think the SEC tournament, if you get to the championship game, it's going to take so much energy. It wouldn't shock me. Whoever loses in the first round makes a deep run to the NCAA tournament just because of how tough that league's going to be to finish it off.
Well, notes that Brendan does an incredible amount of research and these notes and things to look at topics, and it's unbelievable that goes out all over social media. And one of the things he has on this morning is Tyler Nickel led the Commodores with 21 points, 7 3-pointers.
Yeah.
Let's get inside that basketball coach brain of yours and think about that. Buzz Williams teams, well, they're not the most talented. They never have been. Maybe one day they will. They don't lack money or resources, but he gets every ounce out of those guys. And for Vanderbilt to go on the road and win the way they did, I think Vandy's a tournament team.
Man, they are. But what's really interesting about 7 3-pointers in a game against a Buzz Williams defense, that just doesn't happen, guys. And, I can see the first two coming in, but, he's going to have someone locked on that individual. And that's a rarity. So last night was one of those performances where I'm sure the Aggies defensively, first of all, they gave up 86 points at home. They lose 86-84, I believe. And that's just uncharacteristic. And I'll say this, and I think this is like, Matt, what are you talking about? This is coach speak. But sometimes a couple losses at the end of a conference season allows you as a coach to go in the locker room and say, okay, guys, we have to refocus, we have to recenter, and let's take a look. Let's do some self-seeking and get better as we prepare for the conference tournament and the NCAA tournament. So I ultimately think, and I say this and I believe this, I lived it. We try to get better as a team every day.
Yeah,
I was a coach, and you don't, unless you're the 1976 Indiana Hoosiers, you don't win every game. So my thought process was always, even in a loss, what can we take out of that constructively that we can use moving forward to continue to better our basketball team? And I have confidence that Buzz Williams will do so moving forward.
Well, he's an outstanding coach. I mean, look in this league, run down the list. Buzz Williams, I think, is one of the best coaches in the country. I think the best coach in America, period, any league, crossing all boundaries, is Rick Pitino. Yeah. Say what you want about the guy, but I don't see it happening this year, but he sticks around long enough at St. John's. The Redmen will make it to the Final Four because he's done it with Providence and Billy Donovan. Remember that? And they beat that Alabama team. Kerry Jones, one of our viewers up in Lebanon, Tennessee. I love this guy. Sends me a lot of really good information. And he was talking about that Wimp Sanderson team in '87. They look like Final Four, and Providence takes them out. He does it at Kentucky, wins the national championship. And we forget how long Pitino was at Louisville. 01 through 17, he won it all in 2013. I think he's the best active coach in America. And he's not even in the SEC, but he's been there. I'd just be curious what he thinks about the league.
Well, I don't think I think there's probably about a subset of 6 to 10 coaches that could be in this conversation right now.
Yeah.
I don't think you're wrong with putting him in that list. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think the job he has done at St. John's is unbelievable. The other night they had UConn. They finished the game off, but in the first half, I think they had him up down 18 or 20. It was just classic Coach Pitino. And I think one of the things that he does, all coaches are making sure their teams are well-conditioned and ready to play for 40 minutes, right? That's kind of like the expectation, the bare minimum. But, he always has done it at an extreme level. And his teams back in the days when, they were going to give you 40 minutes up and down basketball.
Yeah.
You did not want to play them. You did not want to play them.
No.
So I think the job he's done is outstanding. I know this is an SEC show, but I'll tell you, I don't know if you saw Michigan State hitting a buzzer beater from 60 feet last night. Tom Izzo has got a group that has got a chance, Rob, to make a deep run. They're 14-3 at top of the Big Ten. Yeah. And the Big Ten's not as strong a league as the SEC in basketball this year. But honestly, they're a team, Michigan State, that they defend, they rebound, they have some scoring options. They're a very complimentary basketball team, Rob.
Yeah, and I'd put in there, then you got to throw several SEC coaches in there among the best coaches in the country. Yeah. So let's bring in Jason Caldwell from AU Undercover, one of the best out there. Jason, last night, that first half, you know what you're going to get when you play a Chris Beard team. I'm one of these guys. I'm listening to Andy Burcham and Randall Dickey. I mean, I miss Sonny being on the radio. Randall Dickey's pretty good. Have you had a chance to talk to him? Because Andy's going to be on our Friday morning show with us at 8:30. But I can't help, and I've got it perfectly synced on my TV, the broadcast and TV. Tight toward the end of the first half. Auburn hadn't played a second half like that in a while. I think that was a powerful passing of a kidney stone there last night.
Yeah, they actually played three straight halves. So they scored more than 50 points. The second half, the previous game, and in both halves last night they scored 50 points. But in this league right now, and we saw it the night before with Georgia's their hot start against Florida. You're going to normally, 95% of the time, somebody's going to have a run, and how do you handle it? How do you withstand that? And Auburn was able to do it. I thought offensively that was as crisp as you're going to be against a Chris Beard team. I mean, they don't normally give up a whole lot of points, and Auburn was able to get whatever they wanted. I think a lot of that is because Janai Broome is probably closer to being full speed than he's been since the injury to South Carolina. I think you can see him have a little bit more bounce and more pep in his step. And when that happens, he's able to now put the ball on the floor and do some things with it where we saw him for, 5 or 6 games where he basically would just, okay, I got to get to the block, get me the ball, and I can try to get a shot up. And he was still pretty good, but now he can do things with the basketball. And, hey, 4 assists, it opens up the floor for everybody. And so it's a little bit point forward at times, but that's a good spot to be in. So, yeah, I thought that was – and here they've been winning. They'd won 25 games, and I thought probably for the past – month and a half that Auburn had not played anywhere close to its best basketball game. And they're still winning. Yeah. That's a really good position to be in. And now you see how you can finish this thing off. But that was a pretty good performance from the Tigers on Wednesday night.
It was, and they played a lot of people. And the one thing, I think the Alabama game and Coach Matt Dean, he's been a coach in men's and women's basketball 26 years. You know it, and Jason, you know it. Watching the grind, that Auburn-Alabama matchup a few weeks ago took a lot out of both teams. And Auburn probably beat Alabama twice. They went on the road. Missouri scored 110 on them. But Auburn has won 3 straight home games, and they've all, the first half especially, been really tough. I think winning games like that, guys, makes you a better team as opposed to winning everything by 30. And then the first time you face any kind of adversity, you may not know what to do. It can become too easy if you're not careful. I know that sounds crazy, but it's fun when you got to work for them, at least coaches.
Yeah, there's a fine line, I think. I think there's a fine line between, hey, we like to play close games because we know how to win them, but you don't want to play 17 of them in a row because sooner or later one of them's going to bite you. And so you kind of like, you've got that experience. If you're Auburn now, you also like to be able to take a deep breath every once in a while too. And so I think there's a balance there, but that's good. Yeah, this Auburn team, anybody that plays in this league is going to be battle tested. The question is, can you do that while not getting worn down? Because the Big 12 was the SEC last year, and none of those teams made it at the end because they were so beaten up and so worn out. By the time they got the NCAA tournament, they're like, "We don't have any legs left." Can you balance the difficulty of this league while still staying fresh enough to be able to finish at the end? that's a question that nobody knows yet.
Yeah. That's why I love having you on here and stuff like that. It's true. Coach, jump in here with Jason Caldwell, AU Undercover, 24/7.
It's been a while. Good to see you, Jason.
You too.
I was really impressed last night too. And I know how good of a shooter Chad Baker-Mazara is, but he had that one sequence where I think he missed a wing three. The ball got back to him. He hit again, and then next possession he comes down. Kind of after he lets the ball go, he kind of turns to the crowd and comes back. It goes in. The place goes nuts. But interesting stat from last night: they shoot 11 of 21 from three, so over 50% from three. They were almost 59 point whatever from the field. If you play Auburn and they're even in the low 50s or around 50 from both those, you just don't have a chance. And I know we talk about this a lot, but I do think, Jason, there's a disinterest factor when you have this long of a conference season. You're going to have games where you're supposed to win. I give you a great example on that. I think it bit Florida. They get down 26 to Georgia. They come back and take the lead late. It wasn't enough because Georgia finished them off. But let's not forget, we talk a lot about the top of the SEC, but there are times in this league, like Chris Beard's team for the most part has been really good this year. Yep. They've had a couple stinkers, but to beat them by 30 last night, I mean, you're talking about a team that could go in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, I believe, if they get the right matchups in Ole Miss. What does that say about the top of the league? And Jason, I agree 100% right before you came on with making sure you have the legs to make a run in the NCAA tournament. And it doesn't help either that right before the NCAA tournament play, you got the SEC tournament, which is great for fans. Everyone loves it. But as a coach, you worry, am I going to get someone banged up? If I get to the title game, is that too much to think in less than a week I can do it again in a different pod? But the good thing is, you're going to have a lot of great seeds in our league. Hopefully the first round matchups are favorable enough that by the time you get to the second game of the first weekend pod, everybody's played a game and you have good footing, and you're prepared to take it to the next weekend.
Yeah, I think something too about the SEC tournament is I wonder how much for Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, how much – even a Kentucky, some of these teams, you're not going to improve your seeding very much.
Right.
The bottom half, a Texas and Oklahoma, a Georgia, going, hey, look, we want to make sure we win a couple of games to secure this thing. We saw it, just last year. Well, we've seen it from Auburn a couple of times. You've won the SEC tournament. It didn't improve your seeding at all. It didn't impact you a bit. And then you lost the first round. Alabama lost the first game they played and made to the Final Four.
That's right.
So you go, there's no magic formula. People are like, I want to stay hot. Well, it worked in 2019, but it hasn't worked much since then. If you're Auburn and you finish off the SEC regular season and you have 17 quad one wins or whatever it's going to be, you're going to be the overall number one seed, or if not the second number one seed. Yes. You're going to be able to play wherever you want to play. Maybe you go, hey, look, we're going to play this thing a little differently. We still like to go win, but we're not going to exhaust everything we have in Nashville to do it. And so I don't know. It's a question, but getting back to your point about Georgia and Florida, the depth of this league, and it doesn't look great. You look at South Carolina, you got one win, and some of these other teams have 4 or 5, but you look at South Carolina has an NBA guy. Georgia has an NBA guy. Arkansas has 2 or 3 NBA guys. Texas has an NBA guy. Oklahoma, you play a guy. We saw last night, Texas has a guy score 39, they lose. That's what you run into is you go, man, it's crazy. Auburn, you played all those teams, and they may have more NBA prospects than this Auburn team does, who is but it shows you the maturity, experience, and a roster full of good players.
Yeah.
Now, you got a couple of really good ones. Right? General Ken, there's a couple of really good players.
Yeah.
But, man, having the depth and the ability to go plug in a guy, and guys with experience, I think has been huge.
Jason, looking at that Auburn team, Chad Baker-Mazara, Janai Broome, and you think about the freshman Todd Pettiford, you get those guards, Todd Pettiford, Miles Kelly, Denver Jones, Chad Baker-Mazara. Those are the 4 guys you want touching the ball at the end when you're throwing it in bounds. there was a game or two back where it was thrown into Janai Broome right away. And of course, and he's not the best free throw shooter, but he's the best player in the country. That's the kind of funny thing to say about him. And then you've got Dylan Caldwell. He's such a great player, but he makes so much happen. What are you concerned about down this stretch run? There's 3 games left. Auburn's got to win 1 to at least share the title. Going to Lexington, I remember I was at Auburn. John Kaler out of Morristown, Tennessee, hits that 51-50 at the buzzer. That's the last time Auburn's won up there. Auburn's Final Four run in 2019, they got beat by 26 and then reeled off 12 straight wins. I don't think Auburn's going to be feeling any pressure Saturday.
I think the only pressure is it's a place you've only won twice as a program. Yeah. That to me, that's the only. Okay. And here's the thing: even in 2019, that Auburn team got hot, but Kentucky was probably a more talented team.
Yeah.
This is the first time probably in our lifetime. Now that 99 team, but this is the first time in my lifetime where I go, I think Auburn is a much better team than Kentucky going to Rupp. Yeah. Now, it still might not matter. Kentucky's not a bad team, and they've got some guys that can shoot. Yeah. But I think you look and you go, this is the first time where Auburn is a better basketball team from top to bottom than Kentucky is. Now, Kentucky's here's the thing. If they make 9 of 17 threes in the first half, and they've done that, if they do that, you're probably going to lose. That's the nature of the game right now in this league is Georgia did. That's what Georgia did to Florida. You look up and you go, there's 7 of their first 9 from 3. Man, you're in a hole.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key. But, you look at Kentucky and they're not a real physical team. They got some length, but they're not real physical inside. So you think about Janai Broome and these guys. Owe is the one. He's such a difficult matchup. And last night, Oklahoma just let him just do whatever he wanted to do. And I was shocked down the stretch that they didn't do something to get the ball out of his hands. They just kept letting him drive to the basket and like, well, we'll try to make a play. Well, you weren't going to. Auburn will have a plan to try to slow a guy like that down. But if Kentucky makes shots, it's going to be difficult. And that's kind of the nature of everybody in this league at the moment.
Yeah. And the scariest thing, Alabama against Mississippi State Tuesday night, 22 3-pointers.
Yeah, I mean when you have a night like that now, Alabama's more capable than probably anybody of having those types of nights because of what they do on offense. Kentucky's very similar though. Kentucky, the same type things where those guys, no matter who it is, they catch it, they have an open look from 3, they're going to take it. So it challenges you defensively because you're going to have to Janai Broome, Dylan Cardwell, Chaney Johnson are going to have to defend on the perimeter more than they've defended on the perimeter all year long. And I mean, they're used to doing that, but it still opens up a lot of things.
Yeah. Matt, you hear the term used and as a coach, chasing them off the 3-point line. In getting guys to buy in to play defense, when you do that, it's just a different dynamic because not every team can get their guys to do it.
Yeah. 2 thoughts on that from my past experience. First of all, real easy. You got to get back in transition. You never want to give up an open 3. Back in the day, a long time ago, the team sport has open to coming down and taking that first shot from 22, 23 feet. Yeah. They practice it. It's not the same game. That's number 1. Number 2, when you're dealing with screen or zoom action, as they call these days, or, Jimmy Sykes likes to talk about the NASCAR cut going downhill. Really, that's just a curl action from what I grew up with. But the bottom line is you scout these things. To Jason's point, I agree. I watched a little bit of that Oklahoma finish. Your job as a head coach, if I know Jason's hot, Rob, I'm going to want you to take the shot or have the ball in your hands, however we're looking at the action. And I've been a little disappointed. Oklahoma's talented. I mean, they're 4-11 in the conference, guys, and they're really good basketball.
They're pretty good.
Yeah, they're pretty good. But they've had some bad losses, and last night was a game where Kentucky kind of controlled most of the first 15 minutes. I think it was a 2-point game at half. Oklahoma had a 5-point lead, I think, down the stretch, and then
pretty
Kentucky right. And I go to your point, Rob. There's just so much scouting. So I want to also make a point about Bruce Pearl. So Jason brought up the fact, I think he said, twice in program history, Auburn has won up there. I'm sure Bruce Pearl's going to utilize that motivation-wise. And you look at the stretch of games they got coming up at Kentucky, at A&M, and close the season out with a rematch with Alabama at home. They want to win Saturday badly because, to your point, Rob, they want to be regular season champs. They'd like to go into that last game and not worry about winning that game to clinch that, right? They don't want to give Bama any open air there or space, whatever you want to call it, or light at the end of the tunnel. I just think they go into Rupp, and I think Jason's right. They're the much better team from top to bottom. I look for them to go in there and really play really good basketball. And I think one of the things that Coach Pearl always does, even when he doesn't have the depth that he does now, he will guard and he will take away your strength. And I think you will see an Auburn team play really inspired on Saturday. And I think they got some extra motivation because the game's in Rupp. I really do.
Yeah.
Jason. Yeah, I agree. I think it's an interesting thing. You're talking about taking away Auburn, and that's what Bruce Pearl wants to do. Is like, look, I'm going to make you do something different.
Yes.
And that was the thing about last night, Oklahoma. I'm like, sooner or later, somebody else has to beat you. Mm-hmm. And if you don't make somebody else beat you, then that would mean, if I'm Porter Moser today, I'm like, I'm sick to my stomach going like, man, I would let one guy beat us. I think there wasn't a Kentucky player that had a basket inside the last 11 minutes of that basketball game.
That's right.
They won one guy. So yeah, I think, a really interesting matchup, and it's a crazy time. You look at, we're talking about Auburn, you go, man, you got to go to Rupp, you got to go to Reed Arena, and then you get Alabama at home. And then you think about Alabama. Well, Alabama has to go to Knoxville, get Florida at home, and then at Auburn.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the toughest stretch I've ever seen.
3 games left. And I mean, we were talking about Florida. Florida got difficult. They got Texas A&M at home next. A&M's got at Florida and Auburn. That's life in this league, and that's it. And it's just survive and advance. And Auburn has been the best at surviving this season.
Yeah, and it just seems like the buy-in. You don't see it on every team, but down the stretch, that win last night, a lot of people, Doug Dean and Ronnie Sanders on this text last night or this morning, I saw about what a win that was going into the stretch. That was like, okay, we're not going away. Jason, before you go, and make sure you let people know how they can follow you and all the great work you're doing and the whole team down there. Philip Marshall's column, How Auburn and Alabama Wrestled Control of the SEC Basketball. This is the 8th straight year. And it's just great content all the time. But what can you tell people right now? Who comes back on this Auburn team? Is Chad Baker-Mazara eligible to come back again next year? It seems like there's always guys want to stay. They don't want to leave. I don't know what it is. I do, but I'm too biased to admit it. But it's Pearl's got something going.
As long as this junior college rule doesn't change, he has a junior college year. Now, whether he wants to do that or not, I don't know. But Denver Jones, because he has a junior college year, technically right now would be eligible to return. And then depending on what happens with the D2 rule, Chaney Johnson is a guy that could have another year. And we've seen a D2 football player get eligibility, and we've seen another D2 player. They said no. Well, only thing we've learned right now is that if somebody stands up and threatens the NCAA, that they cave. And so I don't know. I think it'll be an option for Auburn. So I think a couple of those guys could return. We know no matter what. If anything we've learned in basketball is that it's okay to be young in the backcourt, but if you're young in the front court, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
you got to have older, experienced guys. It's the equivalent of offensive tackle, defensive tackle in college football. You can play a couple of freshmen, but you better have some older, experienced, mature guys in those spots, or you're going to be in trouble. That's the same thing with bigs right now in college basketball. You better be old, and so Auburn's going to go get some experienced bigs to add to this roster before next year, and that's what you got to have. Those young guys. Look at Rutgers. You can be as talented as you want to be, and you can have 2 lottery picks, but there's still a different world when you're talking about playing a full college basketball season.
Yeah, I like that. If you're inexperienced in the front, the big guys up there, yeah, you're in trouble. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. And again, let them know how they can follow you. And looking forward to talking a lot of baseball with you. Because if I had to pick, I think that's you and Cameron's favorite sport. I'd love to see y'all up there. If Andy's ever out, put you and Cameron up there. I think that'd be pretty awesome because you are a baseball junkie and got a pretty good program going right now with Coach Thompson.
Yeah, doing pretty good. And yeah, I love college baseball. It's kind of my thing. I love it. I don't really watch Major League Baseball anymore. I grew up doing it, but not anymore. Yeah. But so you can follow us, auburnundercover.com, part of the 24/7 network. YouTube page has videos, all those things. You can check us out there. And yeah, and Nathan's killing it in basketball. Him and Patrick Bingham, our intern, are doing a great job. Philip doing all his stuff, Christian in recruiting. And so we got a team there to kind of give you everything. So hopefully you enjoy it.
Yeah, and our intern we had with us, William Halliday's going to be working with y'all. He's excited about it. I told him, I said, just get on their back wheel, show up every morning. What can I do to help? But Sylacauga Made, Auburn man, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You bet. Coach Matt Dean, I love this conversation with you and Jason this morning because you're so good about breaking it down, but also not complicating it. You know, if you're teaching physics, you better know how to teach people. Before we bring in our next guest, another one of our favorites, Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa, let me say something about one of our sponsors, Winter Timber Outdoors, located in Athens, Alabama. They are working on their blueprint. It's to grow in all the Southeastern Conference towns. Winter Timber is in Athens, Alabama. Got a store under construction in Auburn right now. And they are looking in Athens, Georgia, Fayetteville, the Memphis market, all the shooting sports. They got you covered. Turkey season is starting here in the next week and a half. In the South, in a lot of the states, you got to get the right camo patterns, the right ammunition, the right kind of gun. Man, it's tough to beat a good Mossberg 12 gauge, 3.5 pump camo, the blinds, the decoys, everything. All your turkey hunting gear, duck hunting, deer hunting, everything. Winter Timber Outdoors. Take a picture of that QR code. They got a great staff of people there in Athens, which is right next to Huntsville and Town Creek, some of the great cities in America. I always say Huntsville on the top of Alabama is the smartest city in Alabama. I had so many fraternity brothers from Huntsville, Alabama, the Rocket City. And another one, Gary Harris. We're talking about college basketball. Man, Alabama the other night, 22 3-pointers. I think that's the most ever in an SEC game. When Alabama gets rolling, it's a track meet. It's like, trying to beat the best USA 4x400 relay team. You're in trouble. Alabama lost a couple in a row, but they see what's there in front of them. Let's talk about where they are and where you think Alabama ends up. And thank you, as always, for joining us.
Yeah, hey, Rob, we'll see. I mean, I don't know, and I've stats and research people. You may know, Rob. I maybe in the heyday of the Big East in the early '80s. Maybe in the ACC at some point in time. Maybe Matt knows, but I'm not sure that there's ever been a team in the history of college basketball that has finished their season with 3 top 5 opponents. Right. And Alabama's sitting there at number 6. I mean, so you're talking about at Tennessee this Saturday, and I know Florida may drop, but right now they're, number 3 in the country. You got to play Florida next week, and then you finish out at number 1 Auburn. I mean, that is a gauntlet any way that you look at it. I mean, that's just the reality of it, is that it's a gauntlet. But when they play like they played the other night, and I know every team can say when we play our best, but I think Alabama's best. I've said this all year. I think Alabama's ceiling, and I'm not saying they're the best team. I don't think they are the best team in college basketball, but I still think their ceiling is higher than any other team in the country. And when they get on a roll like that, I mean, it's something else. I mean, it's 66 points and 3-point field goals alone. I mean, let that sink in, and scored 111 and, had had they had the mindset to, probably could have scored more. And Mississippi State's, I wouldn't say that they're a great defensive team this year, but Jans always hangs his hat on defense. I think they're a good defensive team. So that was impressive. But, the challenge Saturday's different. You're going on the road to Knoxville, and that has not been a place where Alabama has played well. That's been one of the places that's been tricky for Nate Oates. And you're playing a team that their mindset is going to be to keep you in the 70s, and they've got a defensive mindset. They're tough. They're physical. We saw it against Auburn a little bit with Alabama. Those type of teams, mature, physical, older teams, if there has been a kryptonite for Nate Oates, you go back to San Diego State a couple of years ago in the NCAA tournament. It's those type of teams, big bodies, veteran guys that will not let you get to your spots and will not let you get in a rhythm. So that's a challenge. Florida's another big physical team, and so is Auburn. So these next 3 games will be a challenge for Alabama because when you play the better teams, and Mississippi State's a good team, but they're not a great team. When you play the great teams, everything's harder. And so we'll see if Alabama will defend well enough and try to protect the basketball well enough, because they're not going to make 22 threes against Tennessee. All right, we know that. Probably not going to make 22 threes against Florida. Probably not going to make 23 threes against Auburn. So they've got to find another way to win. And I think that's the challenge for Alabama. I think it's kind of been the challenge all year. But, they're a really good team. I think they're a Final Four caliber team. But how they're going to finish this regular season, I could see, a couple losses.
Yeah, I'm going to give a swag here. No one's ever closed out with 3 of the top 6 teams ever. I do remember in football in 2013, I remember Auburn closed with 3 of the top 5 teams, and had they beaten Florida State for the title, that would have been the first time it's ever happened. It's never happened in basketball.
Yeah.
A swag stands for scientific wild-ass guess. So,
I'm with you, Rob. I doubt
never happened
to play 3 top 5 teams your final 3 games. I mean, if Alabama wins one of those 3, I still think they should be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
with the entire body of
work. You on that? Yeah, no, because as Doug Dean says, the ACC versus the SEC is pretty much church league, and I've seen some good church leagues, but not this year. Coach
not this
Dean.
Year, no.
And they're a great league historically, but it ain't this year.
Yep.
Matt?
No, Gary, it's good to see you again. One of the
Matt.
things that's interesting is this week, last week on Thursday, because that's the time I'm on with Gary, we were talking about can Alabama rebound after that loss to Missouri. And Nate Oates and his staff, it was a great win against Kentucky. They controlled the game. And what they did, and Gary's right, Mississippi State, regardless what you think of them, they're a really good team. And they handled them like no tomorrow and 22 threes. And I think that's what's the beauty of this league. Like, I remember coaching for the length that I did, and you make a decision early in the season about what type of team you're going to be. And for as much as Tennessee is a grind out, possession by possession, defend the ball, help side, all these things, Alabama in their practice are going up and down the floor 100 miles an hour, and they're shooting 3 after 3 after 3. Yeah. And the contradiction in styles, it's what's beautiful about the sport of basketball. Mm-hmm. You don't get that in any other sport. And, in the tournament, when Alabama made their Final Four run, people were worried they were going to have an early exit because of the way the season ended. But sometimes, and this is what I don't know enough about Nate Oates, this is why I think he's a great coach. Every time Alabama kind of gets knocked to the ground, man, they respond. And that's coaching, and that's leadership, and that's maturity with your basketball program. Alabama checks all the boxes. Gary's right. Their ceiling is definitely higher than most people, if not everyone. And I would not be shocked if we see Alabama-Auburn rematch in the SEC championship game and also in the national championship game. That's how good both programs are. Now, we also know the reason they call it March Madness is what I just described. There's going to be a matchup or 2 that you have to win 3 straight weekend pods to get to that elite point. There's going to be a team in there like we saw San Diego State, okay? I'm still trying to figure out a team, Rob and Gary, that's going to be really difficult for Auburn, though. Rob, you've been saying all year that Florida's size has bothered some people. So Florida's size was able to, kind of neutralize Auburn in that win for Florida.
Absolutely.
But then Florida's down 26 the other night at Georgia, so go figure it out. So going back to the Big East comparison, what's great, guys, about that, I'm a big basketball buff. I mean, I grew up in Iowa, but like you look at Georgetown with Patrick Ewing, you look at St. John's with Chris Mullen, Walter Berry, and how about Raleigh Massimino's run when they beat Georgetown that great night when they played so well. I mean, the history of basketball, it all comes back in a full circle, and we're seeing the same thing in the SEC 40 years later. We're seeing a league that could legitimately have, 2 to 3 teams in the Final Four. I know Duke's very good. Gary, before you came on, I really think what Tom Izzo's done this year with his team is one of the best coaching jobs in America. We talked about Rick Pitino, the job he's done at St. John's. Under the radar coaching job this year, Dana Altman at Oregon, a team that's kind of boring to watch, but they've actually been playing better basketball. If I look at the Big 12, there are a multitude of teams out there. Grant McCausland's done a great job with Texas Tech. You look at his storyline from, I believe, Arkansas State to North Texas to Texas Tech. There's a lot of great coaches in basketball, but I still believe Auburn and Alabama are the best 2 teams in the country, and part of it is the style of play. You don't want to play Alabama. Trust me, guys, as a coach, transition defense, nightmare against Alabama. It's a nightmare. And then against Auburn with their complexity of inside and out, Rob, they're the best 2 teams in the country.
Yeah, that's broken down. It's like asking an engineer how the heating and air system works. That's brilliant take on that. Gary, that Alabama having to close out with what they've got. If I'm Nate Oates, man, I'm going, guys, we have a chance to do something that's never been done before. But then again, you don't want to peak because then you got the SEC tournament and then you get into March Madness. So I think he's good I think he's really good at keeping those guys.
Sorry, I'm in a new studio in here. I don't know. I have no idea where that came from.
Touchdown, Alabama.
I've got no idea where that came from or how to shut it down.
But you think about what Nate Oates has got to be. Nate Oates has got to do. He's got to go in there and tell those guys, let's try to win every game.
Let me get out of here where I can hear you.
Yeah, even if you did win every one of those games, you still got to go to the SEC tournament and you still got to go into March Madness. So that's keeping an even keel. And I'm a pretty wound up, excited person. I might need some gummies or something. But what an opportunity. You're playing at Thompson Bowling Arena. And then you got Florida coming in hey, by the way, Gary,
they're redoing studios up here at the radio station.
Hey,
and so I was in a studio and they just bolted out over the console. I don't know where it came from. So
Gary,
I can't get in my studio yet.
If a coach were to, during a game, could you imagine Bruce Pearl or Nate Oates on the sidelines during a game and something goes wrong? If they had a panic attack, it's like something goes wrong every time you go up and down the court. No problems. But this is Coleman Coliseum. Somebody put a picture out from the IBOB, the game February the 15th at Coleman Coliseum, and it gets ridiculed a lot. It's an old arena, but architecturally, it can be loud. Man, that's going to be what an environment that's going to be when the Gators come to town.
Yeah, I've been saying this for a long time. A lot of the people that criticize Coleman Coliseum have never even been there. It's cool to criticize it. It's cool to call it an airplane hangar. It's cool to call it, dilapidated and all that. But listen, it's a good place to watch a basketball game. Yeah. They've redone it several different times, and they're all working on a $55 million or $60 million, extension with, another new practice facility. They'll give the one they use now completely to the women. It'll have, the nutrition center and where all the players can be all the time. But it's one of those things where it's like a restaurant. And there's a couple of them in town, and I won't mention them, where the reputation is, it's great. And you go there and you're sitting there thinking, this really isn't that great, but you don't want to criticize it because it wouldn't be cool to criticize it. So it's awesome. Well, that's the kind of thing with Coleman Coliseum. It's just hip to say it's a dump, and it's really not. And as I said before, I've been here for 20 plus years. I've seen what they've done to it. Now it is, as you said, Rob, it was opened, I think, in 1968. So, it's 56 years old, and you can't undo that. But they put a lot of money into it. You can get nearly 15,000 people in there, and when it's rocking, it's a good place to watch a game. They probably should have built a new one about 20 years ago, but they didn't. And now with NIL, they were going to build one, and Nate Oates said, no, let's build something that the players are at all the time. This is a fine place to play. We need to save some money for NIL. But you're right. It's a fine place to watch a game.
Yeah, and I think that's the trend a lot. Ole Miss put a $350 million project with the football stadium on ice a couple of years ago. Lane Kiffin and them said, hey, let's go get more players. But I think, not every place in Tuscaloosa can be as nice and opulent as Lee's Tomb, perhaps. I've been in there a few times with my SAE friends down there. I walked in there and I'm like, this place is, he goes, it's different, isn't it? I go, yeah. But I think it's a cool place. It does get criticized. Auburn had a sports barn. I was there when the thing burned up at the LSU game. That was legendary, these old arenas. And I think, I'm not against building a new one, but Coach Matt Dean, and Gary, it. A place that has those places in the Northeast with 5,000 and 6,000 seat arenas, the Cat House at Villanova, they're right on top of you. That's where we've gotten all these ideas down in the South. And Coleman, the retrofitting and all the stuff they're doing. First off, you got a great team in there. So people, I don't think you hear that much talk about the arena anymore anyway, when you got a team that's staring down a number one seed, Matt. I mean,
no, and when you watch a game, what's always impressive, I've never been in their arena, but it looks like the fans are so engaged and they're right on the floor, and that's what you want. If I'm a head coach, I want to create that atmosphere. When you come into our place, our fans are ready, our players are ready, and we're going to perform. Across the country, there's some interesting venues. Like last night with the half court shot, or it was past half court that Michigan State hit the buzzer. We don't talk about Maryland, but they have a really good basketball tradition there too. They have a really good environment to play in, and their fans are great. Gary Williams was one of the best coaches in the planet at one time.
What about Lefty? What about Lefty Driesell?
Lefty Driesell. We talked about the 80s, Gary. The greatest player we never saw play pro basketball was Len Bias. We talk about Michael Jordan, and he's my all-time hero. But Len Bias would have been right up there with Michael Jordan, in my opinion, because in the ACC battles, and we go back to the ACC days. I think in a way, this is what's really fun about these discussions, because the SEC now, if we're talking 12 to 13 teams in the NCAA tournament, and if they perform like we're hoping we think they will, and we get multiple teams in the Final Four, and I'll tell you another environment that's not that huge. I wouldn't want to go play at Houston right now. I think they got it. I think Kelvin Sampson's got it freaking rolling. You talk about men. Yeah, they are men. And there's some college basketball is beautiful thing. As much as we miss college football right now, getting going in the March, and the discussions we'll have in 2 weeks are going to be outstanding.
That's a good point on your argument, Matt, for Alabama and Auburn being the two best teams in the country, is they both beat Houston.
That's right.
And we know how hard that is to do.
And Houston's great, aren't they?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's a good argument. Hey, I got to run, guys.
And
they're about to run me out of here. Like I said, they're doing construction. I'm sorry about that.
That's right.
But I can't get in my studio
Gary,
yet.
look.
In the studio where I usually sit in there with you guys, they're using it for the 95.3 The Bear while they're redoing their studio. So I'm running out of places to be here. But
Gary, just remember, thank you so much for coming on. And his Lefty Driesell would give me a foot stomp,
I
Lefty.
saw Len Bias play in person.
Wow.
In fact, I think it was 85-86 season when I was working in Tuscaloosa the first time at the OWDBB. They played Alabama over in Birmingham at the BJCC. Okay. And you had Bias, and that was a really good Maryland team, and you had Buck Johnson and really good Alabama team. It was a good game. Hey, thank you guys.
Take care, Gary.
Thank you, man. Great week. Gary Harris, Tider Insider TV in Tuscaloosa. Jimmy Hodge was telling me one time he ran into Lefty Drizel, I think, at the Atlanta airport, and he goes, Coach, can you give me a foot stomp? And we lost Lefty past year.
We did.
Man, God, this is what is so great. I think we've shifted on these arenas. The one Auburn and Ole Miss built theirs in the last, Auburn built theirs 15 years ago. That thing's 15 years old already. But you look at these old, iconic, the Butler Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, where they filmed the movie Hoosiers, the Cat House, Villanova. You think, look, I watched from Madison Square Garden Sunday, UConn and St. John. Listen, if Danny Hurley, Rick Pitino, that place was on fire. Yes. That's what I love about college basketball. It is such a great. I mean, I grew up with Dr. Tom Davis. I remember what you grew up. You're an Iowa guy, but I remember it so well. Cole Fieldhouse at Maryland. Yeah. And you think about these. Tom Izzo hadn't won a national championship in 25 years, but he's been to 9 Final Fours since then. He's always, when you play one of his teams, it's like, you're the guy at the Memphis Zoo who has to get in there to in the herpetorum with the Gaboon Viper with the 2-inch fangs and watch yourself, be careful. They're Michigan State. I remember when Memphis beat them in 2008, we were at the Rendezvous for my friend Jeff Heimbach's rehearsal dinner, and Memphis beat Michigan State, in the NCAA tournament. And I mean, that was a big ass deal. And when they won it in 2000 at Michigan State, remember the Flintstones? He had all those players from Flint, Michigan. They called them the Flintstones. But Matt, Brendan, and I was on Buddy Martin's show a couple of nights this week. I love being on there, which is on this channel at 9 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday. And also catch our show, AU Undercover. It's on this channel. We do it Wednesdays live at 5 p.m. Eastern with Ronnie Sanders and Doug Dean. I think we're going to get Coach Joe Witt on with us next week. He's got some stories he can tell. What a coach. But look at Florida. They might drop, but they were down 26. Came back, took a 1-point lead. A&M's walking into a buzzsaw. That's an 800-pound monster with a chainsaw coming after you Saturday at the O-Dome. And that's another older arena, but damn, who wants to go play there?
No, I mean, great point, Rob.
Not as an opponent.
No, you don't. And, I was looking at the basically the AP top 25. Currently you got Auburn 1, Duke 2, Florida 3, Houston we mentioned 4, Tennessee 5, Alabama 6. They got St. John's 7, and they got Michigan State 8. What's interesting about that is I honestly believe, and I said this, Auburn, Alabama, you put them in any other conference in America, one of those two teams is winning the league. If Auburn and Alabama are in the same league with Duke, I don't think Duke wins it. I'm telling you this. I don't. Do I think Duke's got a legitimate shot to go to the Final Four, win the national championship? I do. But I think the depth of the SEC this year, we worry about hurting ourselves going into the tournament. But I also think about when you are, it's no different. Think about this, Rob. When you practice, a lot of times when I recruited at Rhodes, I wanted to recruit programs that were winning programs. And let's say I got the 6th or 7th person from a team, but I know every day they're going against 1 through 5. It's no different. There's going to be an SEC team we're not talking about, and it could be Missouri, that has been battle tested, that gets a favorable draw and gets the right matchups, that we get to the Elite Eight, we're going to say, man, we didn't think about these guys. I mean, who knows? I mean, A&M, you don't think Buzz is going to rebound? I think he's going to rebound. And I know it's not probably favorable with the schedule down the stretch he has, but they could actually start to rebound and take that momentum from the SEC tournament to the NCAA tournament. Because one thing I'll say about Buzz Williams' teams, he's not concerned if he makes it to the SEC championship final. His teams are tough. They're physically and mentally ready for the next step. I don't think an A&M team is going to be deterred if they play an extra game or two against really strong competition. I think they will take that in a positive light and go forward and be a really tough out in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and I think right now what you got to do, if you're gunning for the SEC championship, Auburn and Alabama right now, you better be careful of winning it. Maybe let's say Auburn locks it up at least to share Saturday. Don't go on cruise control those last few games, because losing is poison. It's like mothballs to a rat. Trust me, they can get in your car engine if you're not careful. But Nick Saban talks about rat poison. You start hearing how great you are. You're conference champions. I like being hungry. Don't stuff yourself, you know? I think that's what you got to be careful of. And the mental part of it, man, what a great discussion today, man. I mean, I go back and watch all these shows, and I take a lot of notes. I like you talked about contradiction of styles.
Yeah.
So you know what, Matt, that makes sense. Okay. Let me say this real quick. And stay with us, Matt. I'm gonna wrap it up. Landers Ford, get out there today, folks. They are open Monday through Saturday, every day of the week except Sunday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. $500 off for SEC Sidelines audience members. They are the number one Ford dealership in the Mid-South. If you did buy your last vehicle from Landers, you probably paid too much. Service department will pick you up at home, at your office, round-trip transportation. Lots of ways to save big. Ford Truck Month sales events. I drive an F-150 four-wheel drive with the all-terrain tires. They'll work on your vehicles. They'll take care of you. They'll put you in what fits you, and they'll work with you in their finance department. As for Brad Bellamy, the general manager, they're great people to work with. And they're right down the street from another one of our sponsors, Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Matt, I was in there Tuesday. They have a big sale going on right now, 50% off, and it's Seeger rugged outdoor gear, Duck Camp, Pendleton, Schaefer, Filson, Barber, Ariat, Old South, Devil Dog jeans, Anderson Bean boots, Higher boots. They invented the cowboy boot. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. All of our sponsors, check them out. Check the QR codes out. We've got great ones. And if you want to be a sponsor, reach out to us. We have a big growing audience, and we have the best executive producer in the world, Brendan Martin, makes all this stuff happen. Coach Matt Dean, I would meet you for lunch today, but I've got to go to a meeting at 11. We'll do it maybe tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday. But great conversation. Hey, we're the most blessed people in the world, man. Matt, thank you so much for being on here with us. Are you muted? Okay. Well, hey, we'll see you in the morning, though. Take care.